Welcome. I'm Peter Debruge, Chief Film Critic for Variety, and I'm your host for today's Half Hour with Flamin. I'd like to introduce you to, you know her as an actor and also now the director of her first feature, Eva Longoria. Eva has been nominated for a Golden Globe for Desperate Housewives back in the day. She's a winner of an Imagine Award, Alma Person of the Year. We like to start this out by letting the filmmaker kind of give the elevator pitch for their movie. Not everyone watching this will have seen it. How do you describe it to strangers?
Well, it's a biopic. Flaming Hot's a biopic about Richard Montañez, who was a Mexican janitor at Frito-Lay when he invented the number one snack in the world today, which is the Flaming Hot Cheeto. It's the number one snack in the world, a $4 billion product. And he was a janitor when all of this happened. And so it's a very inspiring story. It's funny, has a lot of heart, and super entertaining.
Great. This is a movie that I feel like is among the most relatable ones this year, but I also know that to you, part of what was so exciting is that it was relatable to an audience that doesn't often get to see themselves on screen. So while I felt inspired by Richard's story, what were you sort of like especially interested in connecting with?
Well, yeah, I felt like I am Richard Montañez. Like his journey, I knew right away I wasn't going to make a movie about the Flaming Hot Cheeto. Like I was like, I can't make that movie. I don't want to make that movie. I do want to make a movie about this man. His life is amazing. He's very, not only inspirational, but like if you, when you see the movie, you're like, this man shouldn't be alive, much less successful. And so he's been told no at every corner that he has seen himself on. People who say ideas don't come from people like you. No, that job isn't for somebody who looks like you. And so, I've been told that as a woman or as a Latina or, as a person from a certain socioeconomic status, and like you're not going to go to college. People like you don't go to 4-year universities, or you're a woman, why are you going to direct? And so I felt like I really related to his story, and I felt like you didn't have to be Latino or Chicano to relate to a story. I mean, you relate to it, and you're you. So I just loved the universal theme about how opportunity is not distributed equally. And I really wanted to explore that with this story.
Well, let's give people a taste of the movie. We're going to let the trailer run so they can kind of get an overview, and we'll be back in a second.
We all write our own stories.
Where is Richard? I'd like to speak to him.
I'm here. This time, that's me, the mero, Mr. Richard Montañez. I'm the guy who helped bring the world the most popular snack it's ever seen.
Are you ready?
A huevo. I've been ready. All right. It was a little bit more like this. Spicy? Yeah, see, that's how I got here. Dear God, please forgive me for the gang, the drugs, the stolen cars.
What the heck, man? Let's move it.
Hey, he is praying, pendejo. Go ahead, baby.
The guy started at the very bottom. I know I don't look it, but I got a PhD. I'm poor, hungry, and determined, sir.
Okay, I can see you're gonna be a weird one.
What's happening?
Layoffs, son. Lots of them.
Frito-Lay isn't getting enough orders to keep the factory open.
Who eats Cool Ranch anyway? That lady.
Wow.
What is it?
It burns.
Well, stop eating it.
No, I like it. It burns good.
I had been searching for an answer. And there it was. They had been there the entire time.
Nothing can hold you back.
I got an idea. It's a spicy chip. It's gonna change everything.
It will save our factory.
And you're a janitor.
Okay, no, hang on.
No one can kill your vibe.
Figure out the next step. Say, the Hispanic market will not be ignored.
The Hispanic market will not be ignored.
Good, but in your voice.
You got the fire inside.
Why are we wasting time on this janitor's crazy idea?
Guys like you and me, we don't get shots like this.
You see that guy right there? I see a chingon, a Montañez.
Yo soy Montañez.
They're Montañez.
Get out there and
Be great.
Nothing can hold you back.
We want to know that we matter to you. If we knew that there was a product out there for us, we'd say, take all our money, cabrones. I got a little hood there at the end, but...
burns good or burns bad?
It burned good.
You can just tell from that, just the the energy the movie has, the creativity you have in terms of like just how to stage scenes that I mean, I feel like this does not feel like a first time feature. It feels like I'm watching, a baby Martin Scorsese, but one with laughs.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Well, there's like Goodfellas energy in this movie.
It's such Goodfellas and Casino. Those are like two of my comps that I use for this film. But yeah, I it's so funny you say that, because people who know me and watch the film, they go, "Oh my God, this is so your personality." So that's another reason why I picked this film, was because it was a community I knew, it was a story I knew, and it was like I knew I had superpowers to bring this particular story to life. Like I've read other scripts and I go, "Oh, I don't have a way in. I don't know that world." And not that directors obviously can't stretch outside of, who they are. But for my first feature, I really was like, "Oh, this I know, this I can do." And I saw the movie in my head. I knew the fantasy sequences I was going to do. I knew the DP I wanted to use. I knew every department head I wanted to hire. Like, it was just so clear to me what this movie was. And that's the movie that you see. The movie I pitched is the movie that I made.
Well, tell us how easy or difficult that was, because I know, you've been directing for a dozen years now. You've been kind of working in short films and television, kind of preparing yourself for this moment. But B, this, you had another feature, that 24/7 movie at Universal with Kerry Washington before this. So like, it hasn't necessarily been, this is not an overnight success thing. This is something you put a lot of work into getting to the point of this green light.
Yeah, it was a struggle. I mean, I think people look at me and go, "Well, you're Eva Longoria. Of course they gave you the movie." I was like, "Oh, no. I had everything against me." At first time feature director, even though I've touched every rung of the ladder in directing. I did shorts, and then I did half hour and 1 hour TV, and then I did dramas, and I did comedies, and I did dramedies, and I did small pilots, and I did big pilots, and I did. So it's like I had touched every rung of the ladder. The obvious next step was for me to do a feature, but even then I wasn't looking for a feature. This script found its way to me. Even 24/7 at Universal, I didn't want to direct that. I didn't even think about directing that. It was Kerry Washington and Paul Feig who go, "You should direct this." And I said, "Oh God, no, Paul, we need you." And he's like, "You have such a handle on what this movie should be. You should be the director." So that was like, I wasn't even thinking of it then when I got that deal. And then that script is, we were still in development when Flaming Hot came along. But yeah, it was a journey. I spent about 3 months on the pitch, and I did a sizzle reel, and I really did a lot for proof of concept. Like, I needed them to see me as undeniably the director. I was up against a lot of directors who had many features under their belt and many successes under their belt. And I really berated them into giving me the job. But really, I think my North Star in making the film, and I think why they hired me, was authenticity. I was like, I am Chicano. I am Richard. This is my world. I grew up with these people. There wasn't anything that I knew I would get wrong on screen. Even the cholos, even the neighborhood, even the paneling in the production design on the house. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, nope, this has to be authentic storytelling. And I think that's probably why they hired me.
Well, it's interesting because, like, you have a commitment to that aspect, but at the same time, there is a freedom to the movie. I mean, in its personality, in the fantasy and flashback aspects, there's a way in which you can kind of, maybe it's about having the foundation right, and then having from there you can embellish and you can kind of bring the humor to it. But it's not like this is a documentary, and it's not like it's that tone either. So talk about the personality you wanted.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't be a document. Like nobody wants to see the documentary of this film. Like I didn't. But you know what's funny? So once I got the job, even when I was prepping for the job, I went down a rabbit hole of real Richard Montañez. He does a lot of TED Talks and motivational speeches, and he's funny. He is so funny, and he's so delightful. And he's not educated, but man, is he smart. And I immediately knew I wanted the movie in his perspective. I was like, this has to be literally in Richard's voice. You know, the voiceover is Richard. A lot of the lines that we wrote in the movie came from excerpts of Richard's speeches. And so I wanted it to be his point of view and his voice. And so I knew I wanted Linda Chavez to write the script. And we sat down. It was actually during COVID that we got to sit and write the script. And you know, she's of this community as well. And I knew she nailed that tone and voice really well. But it was also because we were in his point of view, it gave me the freedom to say what I wanted to say. This is his story, that we're in his head, right? If he thinks something happened a certain way, that's what we're going to put on screen. And so a lot of the fantasy sequences actually came out of real stories Richard told me. I remember he told me, man, there's this guy at work and he was so mean to me and I wanted to kick his ass. Like little did he know I could kick his ass. Like, you know, Richard's from gangs. Richard's, you know, been a gang member his whole life. And this guy is picking on him at work. He's like, I will squash you, my friend. He goes, but I didn't. You know, I had to mind my gangster. And I thought that was the funniest thing. I go, but what if in the movie you did kick his ass? Right? Like, so that kind of started the conversations. And then I'm a big fan of drunk history. And so I liked the idea of the boardroom scenes. There's 2 boardroom scenes where they speak like cholos because it is Richard's point of view, because he never was in Plano at that moment. And so those scenes actually in the script weren't in his point of view. And it always bumped me. I was like, he was never in Plano. How do we know this is happening? How do we know that conversation happened? And so I had to make it what I thought he thought happened.
Right.
And it worked. It really worked. And it was so great. Tony Shalhoub was amazing and just trusted me 1,000% with those, you know, those fantasy sequences.
Well, tell us about casting, because you've got Tony, you've got Dennis Haysbert, who was in one of your early shorts. You've got Matt Walsh, you know, so these guys who are kind of upper level management or, you know, are familiar faces, and that makes sense. But, you know, Jesse Garcia, who plays the lead, not only is he not like someone who looks like he's off of daytime television, like a handsome windblown hair kind of guy. He looks like a real guy. But, you know, it's like I hadn't seen him really, I think, since Quinceañera, you know, this Sundance movie. But what did you want the kind of lead actors to be, these kind of relatable guys we might know from life?
Well, it's funny because I've been a fan of Jesse Garcia's since Quinceañera. And when this project came up, he was one of the first people I did think about. I was like, oh, I want to see Jesse Garcia for this. But it was a hard audition process for them because we started out with factory scenes, you know, because there was so much, half the movies in the factory. So we had a bunch of factory scenes. And then once they got past that, we gave them gangbanger scenes, all the early Richard stuff. You know, could he be tough? Could he be, you know, an authentic cholo? Could he pull that off? Right. And then after that, the test scenes were him and Judy. Could this person be vulnerable and different and evolved, you know, with Judy? And so it was, you know, very hard task to find an actor who could do all of those gears, play 3 different decades, be tough and scary, but funny and witty, and be super smart, but uneducated. And so it was a dance, and Jesse nailed it. And tonally, the movie tonally is threading a needle, you know, because it's like, we're comedy with heart and drama, but a comedy, you know, it's a kind of a lot of things. And so I love the tone of the movie. And when you talk about Scorsese, when I was thinking about who's done first person or you know, point of view very well, obviously Scorsese, he does it in a more poetic, you know, a slower, more poetic way. And then I'm a big fan of McKay's, and The Big Short was a big, and Vice was a big comp for me in regards to setting the table, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people understand the Chicano movement in the 60s. People look at us and you're like, well, you're white, and you're like, no, we have police discrimination, we have school discrimination, and so I just wanted to set the table, and McKay does that so well in a very journalistic way. He's like, this is what was happening, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're moving on. Yeah, got it, on board, let's go. And so I wanted to do something similar, but not as fast as McKay. So I kind of sat in between both of those examples of how to do point of view. So with that as well, Jesse had to have this voice that, was going to carry us through the movie, that really, balanced heart and humor.
Well, this seems like a really good opportunity to cue another scene from the movie.
Today he will announce that he is slowing down the growth of the federal government.
Man, these Reagan years weren't kind to nobody. Nothing trickling down to the pobres and prietos like us.
Deep cuts are planned for programs designed for the poor, such as food stamps, Medicaid, and employment programs.
I already have a hard time keeping the roof over my kid's head, and now I'm making too much money for food stamps.
How do they expect me to feed my family?
The factory was struggling.
I can't even afford my rent.
Yeah, I didn't know politics affect people, especially hardworking people like us.
Hispanics are much poorer now than we were before the Reagan administration came into power.
As the years passed around here, layoffs and shift cuts got more popular than koosh balls and parachute pants. And here I was, 8 years later, in the exact same spot.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about this factory where everything takes place, because I am kind of amazed that can be turned into such an interesting and dynamic place. And yet I don't know kind of how you found it, how you transformed it. I mean, it's probably the least sexy question about this movie, but it's so
I don't.
essential,
I get excited about every time somebody asks me about the factory. I get so excited. I like lean in because I'm so proud of our production designers, Brandon Mendez and Cabot McMullet, who made that factory from zero. We had a room. That's all we had, was a room in Albuquerque. And if you see in the movie, all the overhead stuff is where they would the papers would dry. And they're like, that's going to be millions of dollars to remove. And I was like, leave it. Nobody's going to know what that is. Who cares? And so it just added to, like, we did a lot of foreground with that stuff, and it was great. But we built it from zero, and our special effects team was amazing. I forget how many tons of Cheetos and Fritos and Doritos and chips that we went through, because real stuff. I said, I need it to feel like we're going to have scenes here and scenes here. And I need conveyor belts. And almost in every scene, we have so much depth with our production design that even the tumbler in the back and the far back had to have movement, chips, something back there. And so because of that, we had chips everywhere, Cheetos everywhere. But our special effects guys were really genius. And then the sound design, I was like, not only do I need everything going all the time, every take, it can't be loud, right? It can't be like, we can't have all this. It's not Norma Ray Factory, where she's screaming. We have to hear dialogue. And so they had a huge task upon them, and they delivered 100%. And how great does that factory look? Actually, Frito-Lay people came and said, I think you can make chips here. That's how good we got it.
Well, there's that great scene, just where you kind of let the time go by and the camera's kind of moving throughout. And, but it's one where I think you just realize how much fun you are having as a filmmaker with this material and with this space. And it's like the creativity for something that could have been the least interesting passage of time moment. And yet it's just, to me, like, this movie is so full of ideas, and it doesn't suffer from first time feature, trying a lot of unnecessary stuff. Every inspired idea kind of comes out of the situation that you're trying to communicate in a lively way that's going to keep your audience invested. Now that the movie's out, like, what has been, because on Hulu, we don't always see the numbers or everything. Like, what has been the community's response? Help us, understand how this is connected.
Let me tell you, the greatest reward of making anything, any art form, is having it be received with the intention in which you made it. And I wanted to make a feel-good movie. Literally, I was like, how do I want people to feel when they walk out of this movie? And it's so inspiring, and it's such a feel-good movie. And so that to me was like, in itself, the reward, right? Like, oh my God, people who've seen it love it. But to break records, like, we are the most streamed premiere ever on the history of Searchlight. That blew me away. When we had our screening at the White House and they lit up the White House with Cheeto colors. I was like, the White House is one big Cheeto. And we screened it for 1,000 Latinos on the lawn who were crying and laughing and mouthing the words of the songs that I chose with our music design, who, repeating back, different words. And like, it was like, that was something I couldn't, my heart wasn't expecting to be overloaded that day at the White House with all those Latinos watching and feeling seen and feeling reflected back for one of the first times in cinema. We don't get a lot of bites at the apple. We don't get our stories told. And so I went into this with that pressure of like, I can't get it wrong. I can't get it wrong because we don't get this many chances. And they're going to say, we did hire that Latino one time and it didn't quite work. So we're not going to do it again for another 20 years. You're like, I can't fail.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of Obama pressure in a way, like, like everything that's writing and these kind of these barrier breakers, and you are doing that here. But this movie's about that too, and so I love the way that sort of that meta challenge is part of it. I mean, it's like you're psyching yourself up with the material, but you're also communicating to the town as much as the audience, who's not being heard and whose voices are missing, and it's. I don't even know if it's sly because it's very much on the surface. You can't ignore it. But,
I tried to make it a Trojan horse. I did. And then there were certain cuts of the movie. It was more. And Devon Franklin, my producer, who's Black, is like, it might be too much on the racism. Like there was a lot of other scenes that I, pulled back on or re-edited. Just because I don't want it to be medicine. And I'm actually not, that's not the message of the movie is like, look how hard we have. That wasn't the message of the movie. So I didn't want it to be clouded by that, but I needed you to be informed by it. Right. Because it's like, some people are like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, we don't have that luxury all the time. And I remember one of the first times sitting down with Richard, when we were writing the script, before we wrote the script, Linda and I we sat down with him for many sessions, many hours, just trying to pull more story out of him. And I asked him, why did you choose to be in a gang so early in your life? And he looked at me like I had two heads. And he said, what do you mean choose? You think I chose to be in a gang? Like, and I literally sat back in my seat and I was like, that was a dumb question. Who would choose that? You know what I mean? And I was like, wow, I should know that, and so that's why it feels like you get the message and the classism and the racism and the microaggressions in the movie, but that's not the point of the movie, right? Like the point of the movie is like perseverance and the underdog and believing and family and community. And there's so many other themes that I thought were higher up on the ladder.
But it's also, when you say community, it's about not just sort of like the neighborhood he comes from. It's about the Latino community being largely overlooked in American industry.
Yeah.
And one of those industries is Hollywood. And Hollywood and Frito-Lay, they all depend on those dollars, but they so seldom kind of like wake up and create anything for that audience. And it was, those numbers are there. Like when the pandemic was ending and the first people back in the theaters were the Latino audience, and the great consumers of Hollywood product has been the Latino community. And where are the movies that sort of include them, not just are addressed to them, but like, few and far between, or even a movie like the Fast and Furious franchise, which is, kind of inclusive enough. And so that message is built into the scene we saw in the trailer with, the Who Buys Cool Ranch, and where's the product for that community, but also.
But I'm so glad you said that, because when we say it, it's like, it feels like we're like, hello, we're here too. And we are the biggest ticket buyers in this country. We're 29% of ticket buyers. We way over index for movie going. And yet it's not even about having a Latino in movies. It's about having stories from Latinos and storytellers that are Latino. And so it does make a difference when that happens. And it's crazy to me that we don't get more opportunities. And so I think that's why Flaming Hot has the success it has, is because our community is thirsty for something, about them, not with them only, oh yeah, there's a Latino in Fast and the Furious. No. This story is about us. It's about our community, how we're hardworking and how we strive to, to be our best. And it's about family, and it's about all of these themes that they go, yeah, that's who we are. And it's important because it educates other communities about us, and it educates our community about us. And so I think it's so important, and it was so vital for us to have success. But I want everybody on the film to be recognized for their work, because they don't get a movie like this. Jesse Garcia and Andy Gonzalez don't get roles like this every day. They finally have roles that are juicy and beefy enough that they can present their work to our peers in the industry and say, judge this, look at this. And my production designer is going, look at what we built, look what we did. And my costume designer and my DP, like, I want everybody to be seen within this industry so that we can get other opportunities and more jobs and other work, as opposed to, like I said, getting a movie every 20 years.
Well, and you did this movie in, I think, 35 days on a fraction of the budget. The intensity with which the film is cut makes you realize, yes, that factory factors into a fraction of the movie, but like, you are going everywhere, and there's a lot of ground to cover that you did kind of in a whirlwind, I think.
We had and you know what? That's where my TV came in very handy. I shoot fast. I move fast. I'm used to doing 8 pages a day. And so when they said, you have 35 days, I was like, that's amazing. I can't believe we have so much time. I shoot an hour in 5 days of TV. You know what I mean? Like, and very well, and healthy budget. So for me, this was like amazing that I would get so much time and so much money. And it's not, people are like, that's all you had, that's all you got. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I really was thankful for my DP, Federico Cantini, who also, he comes from music videos and he comes from commercials. So we like to tell the story quickly. I don't need to sit so long. And so if you see, the movie moves, it's 90 minutes, whatever. And it's a page turner, and the camera's rarely still. And we're still when we emotionally need to be still with Richard. But like, other than that, it's moving, it's whip pans, it's push-ins, it's, it's so many things, so much camera choreography that we planned and we prepped for. And so for me, it was like, 35 days. Now looking back, I was like, yeah, I guess 35 days was pretty short. But we had so much fun, and we got everything we wanted to do. And the studio was so supportive. In TV, there's always somebody else. You're shooting for somebody else. You're shooting for the studio. You're shooting for the showrunner. You're shooting for the writer. And so every time there was a question, in TV, I go, okay, you know what? Let me get back to you on that. Let me go ask somebody. And then somebody on the movie set, they go, what do you want? This or this? And I said, let me ask somebody. And then I look and I go, oh, me, I'm the one that decides this. Yes, I would like option A. Like, I was like, so the terrifying decision making every day, that it is your decision. Like, you are the filmmaker. Everything on that screen is something I decided on. That, if I had thought about it before I shot, it would have been daunting. But I didn't have time. I was like, yeah, that, blah, blah, blah. And then now looking back, I go, oh my God, that's so scary. How did I do that?
Well, one of the things that I'm impressed by are the things you're like not afraid of. You're not afraid of like there being a moment where they pray before sending the package to Tony Shalhoub's character. You're not afraid of mixing Spanish into the film. You're not afraid of cultural references that might fly over the heads of some of the audience, but we're going to hit with others. And those are things that, you had to commit to. And it's probably a balance, like figuring out the right level. But, but the confidence to take those decisions I just mentioned, I think means a lot.
Oh, thank you.
What you want the movie to do for the community.
There's a lot of stuff I did in subtitle, because I was like, this is the other reason I'm a big fan of Scorsese, is what he did for the Italian American community in film. I when I grew up, that's all I could look at. I was like, oh, they're kind of like us. I like that's what I saw reflected back was like Italian American films, right? Because they were kind of two things. They spoke their Spanglish, right? They spoke their broken Italian. And so if you look, even if you look at Sopranos, right? Like they never subtitled the Goomba. Look at that Goomba. They didn't put what Goomba meant or whatever, because it was like their slang. So I was like, I'm not gonna subtitle cabrones. You know, like they'll get it, they'll figure it out, you know. And so I really kind of loved that idea of defining what Mexican American culture is in cinema.
Well, let's wrap up by sort of giving, you know, just maybe people who've already seen the movie something for them to look for on a second time, or you know, we want to make sure that anyone who hasn't seen it really feels, you know, compelled to watch it.
Well, you know, it's funny because when you talk about like the success of the movie, one of the main successes that Disney Plus and Hulu, because we're the first movie to stream on both. You can find us on Disney Plus and on Hulu. Was the amount of hours each account watched. So people watched it multiple times, and they said this is the highest rate of repeat watching we've seen for a movie. And I was like, oh my God, that made me feel so great, because I had people walk up to me and say, I've watched it 4 times. Like me, I can watch Casino daily. I will watch Casino and Sharon Stone and Robert De Niro, and like I don't get tired of it. And so I was like, my bar was, I want to make a classic. I want to make a classic that you can go back to that well and find different things. So I think people will enjoy it. I think you'll find more jokes when you watch it the second time. You're like, I missed that. That's so funny.
No, but you're right. Like, it's just like you create an energy in a space you want to be in. I mean, it's like I've seen this movie 3 times. I just love the spike it gives me. I mean, it's like, I don't host a lot of these, but I'm so happy to be doing this one.
I know. I'm so grateful.
I believe in this movie.
I'm so grateful.
You know?
I know you do. And you've been so amazing, because again, if we're not anointed by you and the trades and the industry and our directing peers, like you get lost. And especially in a day where there's so many movies and so many outlets for content, that you're competing not only with other movies, you're competing with Instagram, you're competing with YouTube now. As far as attention, right? We only have so many disposable hours of doing something in the day, and the fact that you really championed us from the beginning, before the movie was out, is not lost on me, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I think it's so important. Like, maybe not everybody wants to know the story of how the Flamin' Hot Cheeto recipe came to be, but this movie is about so much more than that. It's about, you know, a guy who had an idea and had to find the support and confidence to have it heard. And I hope that everyone gives it a chance, you know, and sees just the great work you and the team has done. Thank you so much to Eva for joining us today, and to everyone watching. Thank you for joining us for a half hour.